Hello, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 of the AusCannaPodcast. I'm your host, Christina McMillan. And as we close out 2024, I want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible first year of the AusCannaPodcast. From captivating conversations to on-location adventures, this year has been all about connection, education, and amplifying the voices shaping the cannabis industry. Over the first 2 seasons, we've achieved 12,000 downloads, and the podcast is now being listened to in 55 countries. It's incredible to see Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, and the US leading the pack. Most of you tune in through web browsers, followed by Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Our audience is primarily in the 35 to 59 age range, with slightly more men than women joining the conversation. One of my favorite segments this year has been the rapid fire questions. These questions are designed to catch guests off guard and spark genuine, unexpected responses. Everything from Season 1, Episode 9, when we found out that Alex Mitchell, founder of Invisible Iconic and the Indo Circle, was the lead singer in a heavy metal band in her late teens, to Season 2, Episode 6, when Melanie Wenzel, author of Cannabis Queens, shared a story about an ex that included him renting a massive billboard sign to wish her happy anniversary. Or in Season 2, Episode 8, when Michael Sassano, CEO and chairman from Samai Pharmaceuticals, told a story about unexpectedly bringing a voodoo doll head back in his luggage. But the moment that stood out most for me was in Season 2, Episode 9, during a cross-collaboration with the Alt Med podcast. Mitch really took his time to unpack a question I asked about glitter and confetti, and his thoughtful approach had both Andrew and me fully on board as he dissected it from every angle. Would you rather sneeze glitter or sweat confetti?
Sneeze glitter.
Yeah, sneeze glitter.
Really? Glitter is
But you
like...
can't, yeah, the only thing is you
Well,
can't sneeze on demand. You can
Yeah,
sweat on demand.
it comes down to how frequently those activities occur. I mean, sweating happens a
He's
lot.
really unpacking this. I'm here for it.
I like it though.
Yeah.
Sneezing well, it happens, not that I don't have hay fever, so it doesn't happen that often for me. And when it does, you just can capture it all and then dispose of the
And
glitter.
then throw the glitter over someone. But the thing is, with the sweating confetti, like the confetti is making contact with moisture, and so it's like wet confetti, and so that's a bit sad. That's a
Confetti.
sadder version of confetti. That's very good, Mitch.
Confetti.
And it's actually it's not that good, but we'll go with it.
The problem is, imagine just going to like a class, say you do yoga or something, every time you go, you're the confetti person. Like it's not actually sneezing. Sneezing's almost like a party trick.
But that would make people feel like it's a celebration every time they exercise. You'd be inspiring people to keep fit and to keep healthy.
Yeah, but it's too
great.
often. It's too often. So if you sneeze, people are waiting for your sneezes, and they only happen, once every like week or two. Like it might not be that frequent. Glitter's worse though. I can agree that glitter's worse.
I think that neither one of you have young children where you've had to deal with glitter in crafts.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, glitter gets everywhere. And so to me, the sneeze and the glitter, I'm like, oh my God, that's everywhere. And like literally weeks later, you're still cleaning up.
I agree.
Oh my
glitter.
goodness.
When the world ends, it'll be cockroaches and glitter, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're sweating the confetti, it's sticking to you.
Yeah,
so
it's sticking.
You're controlling your mess.
That word.
You'd look like a pinata.
Wet fetty.
Yeah.
Wet fetty. I think that's going to be my new word. Wet fetty.
You would look like
good name for a strain, actually.
You would look like paper mache. That's what you'd look like.
Yeah, pinata.
You really would. But
it would really clog your drains later in the shower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So
need
maybe for that reason you should do the glitter.
I'm still on the glitter train.
yeah,
All
me
right.
too.
I'm committing. I've committed my answer and I stand by it proudly.
That really was a great episode. While I love the rapid fire segments, I'm especially proud of the On the Road series. It took storytelling to a new level this year. In season 1, I kicked things off with an unforgettable on location episode in Tasmania, where I toured the Tasmanian Botanics Farm. By season 2, this grew into 3 immersive experiences, bringing you closer to the heart of the cannabis community. These face to face interviews allowed for deeper connections and more authentic conversations. So it's no surprise that 2 out of the 3 most downloaded episodes came from this series. The third most downloaded episode was season 2, episode 7, with Adam Carvello from Australian Natural Therapeutics Group. After touring their Brisbane facility, I sat down with Adam to talk about his journey from pizza to the cannabis industry, life in Humboldt County, and the challenges of moving into the Australian cannabis space. But it was his comments around transparency that resonated with many of you.
Sometimes it's easier to get started that way, just importing product. I think my main thing is I just wish that all the different companies were more transparent about the product that they have and where they're getting it from, rather than, I feel like so many are trying to hide the fact that they're importing product. I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing in the world, as long as you are transparent about that and let your customers know. Especially if you're doing both, you can have the two different labels, to allow yourself to have that difference, which is what we've kind of established too. We have our all Australian grown, which is our black label, and then we have our imported products, none of which is from Canada, by the way, but all imported products that we have in our Global Selects brand. So we've tried to be as transparent as possible, but also have both possibilities to the customers, especially if they want to try stuff from different parts of the world.
I just had my mind blown, and now I feel like such a freaking idiot because now it totally makes sense. The black label is all stuff that's grown here, and Global Selects, quote, quote, it's your stuff from around the world.
Yeah.
And I just made the connection, and I feel like a jackass. I can't believe I just made, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think it's frustrating, like from a patient perspective, in the sense that, you get your COAs from Canada, and then it gets here and there's no new COA with it. There's no new information with it. And so a lot of times you're looking at a COA that was done 12 months ago, and you're just now looking at the product. And I don't care how fabulously taken care of that product was. There's no way what I'm looking at is that COA.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue. And that's something that we make sure we do on our end, is getting our own COAs through a third party testing facility. We try to make sure that everything is tested on our end here, just obviously to verify against the results from if it is from somewhere else. And as far as we obviously do full suite chemical and full suite micro, just to make sure that we're happy and that the product is as it's supposed to be. So I think that's something that we try to do on that end, at least for us, to make sure that the customer has a more recent test result that they can look at and be sure that and be comfortable knowing that this is, if not exactly what I have now, then pretty darn close.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be like, oh, this test was done 2 weeks ago and I'm holding the product in my hand. Like, that's crazy ambitious. But, within 3 months, maybe I'd be happy. Like I said, it's really frustrating when you're looking at something that's, 6 months, 12 months. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but there was somebody, it was like 2 years ago. And I'm like, why would you even bother to post something from 2 years ago? There is no way that COA is reflective of what I am looking at right now. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Not possible.
I think that's the hard part for me too. Part of the hard part about as a cannabis user coming from California and then coming here, I think that's something that was really interesting for me, because in California you have to be transparent about that stuff. Whereas here, I feel like if people have a year-old COA, or hopefully not 2-year-old COA, then they kind of shy away from having that information. I mean, they'll still have it for you to look at. But yeah, whereas in California, I mean, if someone had, which would happen, but people would have maybe 2-year-old outdoor that they're still trying to get rid of, but they would at least market it that way and say, hey, this product is 2 years old. It's at a discounted price.
See, I own it. I think a lot of us, if you owned it and was just like, yeah, this is 2 years old, but it still needs a happy home, right?
Exactly.
I think some of us would probably just roll with that and be like, okay, well, they owned it. Moving on, right?
Yeah.
I say some of us, a lot of us would be like, okay, cool, right? Like,
Yeah, at least we know what
we know.
what we have.
My second most downloaded episode was season 2, episode 5 with Liz Warbutton. This was an on the road, but in reverse episode, since Liz drove to see me in Toowoomba during the Carnival of Flowers. We had an amazing discussion about concentrates, but it was Liz's insights on what she looks for on certificates of analysis that you let me know was the most helpful.
What are some of the things that you really kind of look for when you're looking at a COA? Because I'm sure you're looking at things that are very different than what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it depends what you're talking about, like flour or extracts.
Well, I feel like we're on the extracts case.
Yeah,
so
we'll
let's
talk
stick
extracts.
let's stick there.
Yeah. So most of the pesticides and residual solvents, I don't tend to look too heavily into it. I will look at them kind of briefly just to see if they're hitting certain amounts. But really, with regulation, the LODs on it it's minimal. So to hit, if you don't pass on those, then you shouldn't be putting the product on the market to begin with. But I mostly look at the major and minor cannabinoid profile and the terpene profile, to be honest with you. If we're talking flour, I'll look at loss on drying to see how dry the product is. So if anybody enjoys looking at COAs for flowers, it's always good to check the loss on dry moisture content for flowers, 10% and above is kind of what you're looking at. If 5 to 10 can kind of be acceptable, but 5 and below usually is that bone dry, turns to dust kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I can usually tell whether a product's going to be too dry or, not going to meet my personal specifications before it even hits the boat.
It's hilarious that you say that. I need to start paying closer attention because I definitely know 10% is kind of like a rough ballpark in my mind, right? But I don't actually look at that.
I didn't start doing it until recently, actually, when I started to have to make sure that shipments that were coming in were going to meet spec. Like everyone, nobody likes dry flour, man.
No,
So
it's
if
true.
you're sending me something from Canada and it's at 6%, what do you think it's going to be by the time it hits the shores? I'm just going to get complaints.
It's so true. And like I said, holy crap, that I'm going to ask you here
You
for
can-
like
you can check
a
it.
nugget of information. But like,
you
I
can
feel like
tell a lot from
that-
cannabis by the COA, and this is the thing is I can respect people who are about the look and feel, but as someone who got COVID and has had COVID-related anosmia for forever now, I rely on COAs.
I mean, look, I do. I look at the COAs, but that's like what you're saying. That was one of the little lines that I'm not looking at. When I'm looking at a COA, I'm looking at, well, again, the cannabinoids. I'm looking at the terpenes, right? I'm kind of looking like, again, what the makeup is. I guess the like, is it a 2-to-1 to, terpinolene to caryophyllene? Like, what's the... Like, that's
And
kind of what I'm
total
looking...
terpene percentage is a good one.
Yeah, like, that's kind of what I'm looking at, but no.
And I always check to the CBG content, whether it be a
I guess
flower. I think this is another reason why I really like live resin. You tend to get higher CBG content. And Ethan Russo just published a study that shows, and I know this for a fact because I've experienced it, but it's an anxiolytic, so it reduces anxiety and it actually increases focus. So it helps with memory retention. So I have this theory, and this is a theory, it's not science at this point in time, but in Australia, before there was indica sativa, medical, whatever, there was bush and hydro. So anyone who's from the black market here knows bush and hydro. And essentially that means, was it grown outdoor or was it grown indoor? Kind of, hydro is kind of more hydroponic, chemical based. Anyway, so, and there was always this divide among me and my friends, whether it was, are you a hydro person or are you a bush person? And I was always a bush person. And after looking at quite a few COAs between outdoor flower and indoor flower, I noticed a higher CBG content in the outdoor flower because you can't mimic the sun.
You can't.
And you will get a more rich minor cannabinoid profile from growing outside, which is why outdoor flower is so good for extraction. But yeah, it has that higher CBG content. So I actually check flowers for CBG content because I know from personal experience with myself that a higher CBG content means I'm going to enjoy the flower more.
I'm a big fan of CBG.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. I think it's the next big cannabinoid, if I'm being honest with you. Like, everyone's obsessed with THC, and don't get me wrong, I get it absolutely has its benefits. I'm not against it. But I think people kind of miss the fact that there's 400 different chemicals in the plant, and to say that THC is the reason you love weed, it's misguided, if I'm being honest with you. And I remember the first time I tried my first CBD flower. I don't really smoke CBD flower or inhale it at all because it kind of doesn't have a great taste, if I'm being honest. But I do remember very vividly the first time I had it, I was like, oh my God, this is what I like about cannabis. It's relaxing. I'm not getting a racing heartbeat. I can function. And I just remember having that moment where I'm like, oh, there's a world beyond THC. And you can get therapeutic value out of all these different other cannabinoids, and they're so fun to explore because they all do different things. They're all a family, but all that family has all their different personalities, and it's really fun. And some people have preferences. I know some people love CBC because it feels more stimulating, and like, so I think it's important for people to understand that while THC is great, I think THC is now kind of the older cousin that nobody really, in the medical space, nobody's really paying attention to as much. Like my dream, I'm still begging for this, is my dream would be to have a balanced CBG, THC live resin vape. I have a friend in Canada who said he can do CBG flower into live resin. Mixing that with a THC live, it would be phenomenal. I want to try it so bad.
That would be delicious. I'm thinking about it, right? Because CBG in me is very happy. It's very
calming. I remember I had the Medicabolist CBG oil once. I had like 1 or 2 mils because I always go a bit nuts. And I remember I was at a conference and there were people standing around me, and I just remember staring at the wall, and I was in complete bliss. Like, I wasn't high, I wasn't unable to function. I just remember being so calm and so relaxed, and I didn't care what anyone else was saying because I was in my own little nirvana. And it lasted for like maybe a minute, and then I snapped back into conversation. Was like, oh, that was so nice. It's a really cool compound.
I like it to in the morning. I like to make a little sandwich with it with the super silver haze, right? Just a little, and then in the morning it's like that. I mean, I don't do it all the time, but I do it on mornings when I know the rest of the day is going to be chaotic. Right? Like, I know I'm going into a chaotic day. There's nothing I can really do to stop the chaos. So I have to embrace the chaos.
Just got to ride through it.
Exactly. and it's like what you're saying, I'll have that little, whatever, I'm going to tell you straight up. It's my little wake and bake. But
I do
in the course of that wake and bake, I don't want to say it's fleeting, but it is fleeting. And there's that moment where you just kind of sit and you're like, yeah, it's going to be okay. Things are all right. Like, you get the big smile on your face and your cheek hurts just a little and you're like, it's okay. CBG's here.
Exactly. Whereas THC makes me all whacked out. My heart's racing. I'm like, oh God, things are going on, And obviously everyone's different, but I think I'm personally a little bit sensitive to THC. Like, I do like lower THC products. And to be honest with you, I think what I've been chasing in cannabis this whole time is the CBG and the other cannabinoids and things. So THC obviously is fantastic, especially in lower doses. It's really good at potentiating the effects of the other ones. But I think, I don't know. Yeah, everyone's different.
Everyone's different.
Yeah.
And I think it is great here. And like, again, the differences of where we've come and where we're going, and with the concentrates, and again, all the different types of concentrates that are coming out. It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
It is. You can get hash now. You can get the hash ball. You can get the why did I just go for
diamonds?
Bubble hash. There you go. I'm like, you can get the hash ball and you can get, bubble hash and you can get diamonds and you can get diamonds in sauce. Yeah. And it's just like all these things that are now coming out. And I think there are going to be people like you and me that are going to be like, okay, we're going to experiment a little bit and maybe kind of tweak it a little bit more. And then, in a few more months, you'll be like, no, I know I do like that minor cannabinoid. Exactly. This is where I want to be, right?
Yep.
How, because you're consulting. I'm a patient. How do I as a patient, I mean, I guess it's because we do see, obviously there's a push for that high THC and patients are asking for high THC, but how do we change that narrative so that way, the CBG vape that you're talking about actually makes it onto the market, or, again, a CBN vape makes it onto the market? Because I'm willing to bet there are people out there that are hard Topaz fans or hard Royale fans that are like, that's my sleep flower, blah, blah, blah. That if they could get a vape that had CBN and some THC and some CBD in it, yeah, I bet you they'd switch, because CBN is very sedating.
That's it. I think people are opting for what they've always had, which is flower, and again, has its purpose for some people. And I'm sure some people are going to try concentrates and be like, nah, flower's for me, and good on you. Godspeed. But I think what really needs to happen, it needs to be education-based, of course, but product companies at the moment, there are some product companies trying to bring out these interesting, vapes and extracts and things like that. But the lack of education and the fact that patients are so focused on THC means that they don't really sell really well. And like every business, if it doesn't sell well, they're not going to keep making it, unfortunately. But then it also comes down to, I think formulation is really important. You've got a lot of people who don't quite understand how important formulating is to the effects that come out on the other side. And you can't just throw one and two things in and just expect it to work. Like, some things in isolate are better in full spectrums, for example, or some things are better paired with other cannabinoids or other terpenes and things like that. And I think seeing some intelligent formulation is what I personally really want to see. Is like, if you're doing a night vape and you're adding CBN in there, let's look at the terpenes that make you sleepy. Let's add more sesquiterpenoids in there because they're known to be a bit more sleepy. Let's actually formulate this in a way where all the compounds make sense, so we're not just throwing, an extract in and hoping it works. And then this will also give people the freedom to go, okay, well, these are the contents of this and it's stable, so I know it's there. Whereas with flower, it's like, yes, you may like that particular terpene, but has that terpene already volatilized and you're not really sure when you're looking at the COA. Whereas with these, you're looking at the COA, you know it's in there, at least within a variation of 5%, which is pretty good. I mean, you know what's going to work.
That was another great episode, and not because we were eating pastries in the park. Well, here we are, the most downloaded episode, the pilot episode. In this episode, I took you through step by step how I write my reviews, and I explained the sticky icky test, which is a cornerstone of my review process. It's so great to see how much this episode continues to resonate with all of you, especially since it's almost at 1,000 downloads. There are 4 main components to the sticky icky test. The first is the snap. When I squeeze a bud, I want to hear the stem inside snap, not a crack. That's an indication that the flower could be on the drier side. It's a snap, and believe it or not, there is a difference. Second is the bounce back. When I squeeze a bud, I want it to feel dense and spongy, but it needs to bounce back after being squeezed. If it doesn't bounce back and stays condensed, it could be an indication that the flower is still moist and thus needs to cure longer. Third is the roll away. When I squeeze the bud, I want it to stick to my fingers. If the bud rolls away from my fingers as it falls off, it means the buds are sticky and the trichomes are slowly breaking and letting go, which is what's causing the roll away action. If the bud just drops with no roll away, that's an indication that the bud is tacky and thus only sticking to my fingers because I forced it to with pressure. The last component of the sticky icky test is, what does it look like coming out of the grinder? Simply put, flowers that have been cured properly will act like kinetic sand and hold their shape. And that's a wrap for 2024. I can't thank you enough for being a part of this journey. Whether you've been listening to the episodes, sharing the podcast with friends, or sending in your thoughts, your support has made 2024 an extraordinary year. So, this is the part of the show where I'm supposed to pump you up with all the great things happening in 2025, such as exploring new locations, tackling bigger topics, and celebrating the incredible diversity and potential within the cannabis world. However, as I sit here and record this episode, there's a touch of uncertainty in the air. You see, back in October, I found a lump in my right breast. I went for a mammogram in November, and when the results came back, I was told I had a cluster of microcalcifications in my left breast. That was a 3 on the Bredis scale. So I had a choice to wait 6 months and come back for another mammogram or go for a biopsy. Given that I have triple negative breast cancer on my mother's maternal side, I chose to get the stereotactic biopsy. On the morning of Christmas Eve, I got the results from the biopsy that said no evidence of malignancy. However, when I went for my follow-up appointment with a specialist in January, I had to swallow the news that the intended biopsy location had been missed altogether. Like, they should have taken a sample from Alice Springs, but dropped the marker in the location that they took the sample from in Hobart. Okay, so maybe I'm being a tad dramatic, but yeah, look, staring at those images, I knew before the specialist even said anything that I was going to have to go for more follow-up. So now I'm scheduled for an MRI with the results due back in early February. Now I'm still making plans like it's nothing and hoping that you can bear with me if things do get a little choppy. Season 3 is kicking off on Thursday, February 13th, 2025, slightly later than originally planned. But it is a fabulous episode and one you're not going to want to miss, especially if you're a fan of Miss Kim. Anyway, until we meet again, friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. And remember, early detection is your best defense. So get off your butt and book that mammogram, skin check, or prostate exam, because it could save your life.